Directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere, where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles, and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink 'em twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
I'd like to take my whole discography, cram it in your generator, dial it to Zionist. I'd make my very own Antichrist, Jesse Jet but fascified, and settle things with violence. In half a line I'm dialed in, leave him no identity to shield behind or hide within. I'd like to pull out all his talking points, disconnect his socket joints, cue the tiny violins.
Posthumous synthetic beetles, USA by proxy, toxins in your water, tiny plastic in your offspring, plastic in the groundwater, plastic in the clouds, oxys in the reservoir. We tried to flush them out, but we didn't move them very far, just out into the river, where the critters didn't want it, but we nonetheless delivered. Impact isn't something we historically considered till our waterways are fetid and our crops are dry and bitter. We won't connect the dots before the heavy cost to enter, before the DNC would see us vote for lesser Hitler. America by proxy, propaganda for beginners. It's Jimmy Kimmel interviewing chatbot Heinrich Himmler, as those who march for peace are being gassed by the police. A separate, safer crowd demands the bombing never cease, till all that's left of Gaza are its ashes on the breeze. Only then can the oppressor soundly sleep. America by proxy, 2023. It's the AI-rendered Beatles John and George were forced to be. It's AI-rendered Edith Piaf singing on your screen as the wishes of the dead are dipped in piss behind the scenes. And that's what gives that hideous, uncanny valley sheen, that plastic sort of lifelessness that's seeping out the seams. The hologram of Freddy they tried passing off as queen will tell you death does not release you from contractual routine, won't free you from the leeches that already drank you clean. The suited, smirking parasites were not so quick to flee. Your body won't be cold, but they'll be plugging tours and teas. They plotted out your comeback, you just won't be there to see. America by proxy, a giant failing mall, a year at most from shutting down and leveling it all. And once it's been demolished, I'll come leave a ring of salt and pay respect to John and George. I know it's not their fault.
I'd like to take my whole discography, cram it in your generator, dial it to Zionist. I'd make my very own Antichrist, Jesse Jet but fascified, and settle things with violence. In half a line I'm dialed in, leave him no identity to shield behind or hide within. I'd Like to pull out all his talking points, disconnect his socket joints, cue the tiny violins. Mother and baby on razor's edge, don't give a shit what your paper said. Economy creeping up out of red, they divvy a shit little bit of bread. Miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator waking safe and fed. Ain't got a paper to read in bed, jerking them off as they count the dead.
Gorillas in the mist, skin suits in the Senate. Water in the streets, chest deep like it's Venice. Water out a tap in Jackson comes blacker than resin. Black incidentally like most of its residents, which is why it isn't on your television, isn't on the lips of your president. Well, I'm admitting that as evidence. I've been fleshing out a case to be made for the testament. I don't know what our collateral count is, but doubt it is less than the estimate. You just show us a hospital, watch as we Dresden it. Our propaganda gets taken to heart, and you're scarfing it, like it or not. If you think that you aren't, I would urge you to pick that apart, cause you're drinking it, smoking it, driving it, dressed in it. We pay for it, pray to it, bathe in it, fill up the basin, and babies are blessed in it. Ask no questions, bask in the pestilence. See, honey, when the plague goes live, you'd be wise to invest in it. See, honey, when the plague goes live, just between you and I, that's an industry sign that they're all done testing it. And come 2025, they will all be confessing it. And then a few small fry fall guys all fly from the precipice, who were doomed to be wasted like shell corporations, dissolving to vapor, then gone with the resonance, gone with the sense and the sentiments, gone with the dust of the remnants, gone with the ghosts of the regiment, gone like those families in Gaza whose bodies and homes are demolished when Israel sets up a settlement. Gone like your chance at a settlement. Gone like the hope of apologies out of those funding our deadliest research and backroom development. Gone like your shot at a measly I'm sorry from the mouths of our own bioterrorists. God, you cannot imagine the face of the monster. You can't even fathom the scale of its carapace. It's under your feet, yet you're barely aware of it. You see, it's quietly judging the scope of your suffering, sizing you up like a therapist. Then it rides in your guts like a parasite, growing in size and excreting a culture that's purely embarrassment. Equal parts Manson and Maryland, equal parts something we push into madness and something we'll gladly exploit and objectify 50 years after it perishes. Carefully crafted and planned and arranged like a monarchy's marriages. Fucking cousins or otherwise, scourge of the colonized, staged and displayed for the sake of retaining those imperial barracks. And all to expedite a special type of anglicized dysplasia. The kind where half the world is waking up to learn they're being raided, raped, and robbed of all their heritage by Charles and his caravan of 30 servants' carriages. The kind where each in the procession is worth infinitely less, till eventually they're paid in sums of crown-approved disparagement and bonuses of shame, till they're finally told to thank the highest-ranking inbred pig named king of every garrison. One who rose into his power all immaculate, like Harris did. Well, now that garishness is melting down like paraffin that hardens in a shell and shelters terrified and threatened royal terrapin. Those that rule with zero question, although nobody elected it. Democracy was here till we dissected it. Democracy was here until the exhibition exodus. And the loss of that democracy is just a threat for those who've yet to recognize the scent of bait or know the taste of desiccants. Democracy was here and now the smear is all that's left of it.
Democracy was here and now the smear is all that's left of it.
Mother and baby on razor's edge, don't give a shit what your paper said. Economy creeping up out of red as they divvy a shitty little bit of bread. And miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator waking, he's safe and fed. And aide got a paper to read in bed, jerking him off as they count the dead. Mother and baby on razor's edge, don't give a shit what your paper said. Economy creeping up out of red as they divvy a shitty little bit of bread. And miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator waking, he's safe and fed. Aide got a paper to read in bed, jerking him off as they count the dead. Mother and baby on razor's edge, they don't give a shit what your paper said. Economy creeping up out of red as they divvy a shitty little bit of bread. And miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator waking, he's safe and fed. Aide got a paper to read in bed, jerking him off as they count the dead. Mother and baby on razor's edge, don't give a shit what your paper said. The economy creeping up out of red as they divvy a shitty little bit of bread. And miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator waking, he's safe in bed. And aide got a paper to read in bed, jerking him off as they count the dead. Mother and baby on razor's edge, they don't give a shit what your paper said. The economy creeping up out of red as they divvy a shitty little bit of bread. And miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator waking, he's safe in bed. And aide got a paper to read in bed, jerking him off as they count the dead. Fate demanded I be singer of a new ballad about the candidate you wanted like a People, you don't think I see you crying in your cars, but I do. Sometimes I can feel it at a red light, someone at my side trying to muddle through. See them wiping their eyes in the rear view, like black hole sun in the sky. Why the fuck won't you come when I need you? Well, this moment in time is as close as we'll be and as far as I'll meet you. Two windows in between us, new moon in the house of Venus. One stranger who sees you and reads your features knows that your alibi might be tight, but it's not quite leak-proof. So if you're sitting at the light and you're crying in your car, just know that I see you. And it's a 50-50 that I'm bloodshot, gun-shy, once bitten, twice tried, ribs pried wide to the sky till I'm see-through.
That's you. In case you don't recognize yourself.
People, you don't think I see you struggling to breathe, but I do. I see you stumble in your everyday grief like I do. I try, but I do. I'm twice bitten too. My mind's split in two. My knuckles bright white from the 10 to the 2. And the song in my head is the theme for a fugue. A state of decay through the filter of corporate news, where they edit the grays and the blues. They whitewash the brown till they drown out the natural hues. And then it's just another fact to refuse, that the corporate ladders for hanging the company noose. Consider it one of your perks, after all it's communal in use. So you can come and hang till your legs go limp and they're shaking you loose. Now you watch 5 co-workers opt for the alternate exit, neatly suspended above where you wolf down your food. And your company gets its incentives embellished by harping on wellness, suggesting you'd best take time for your mental health after your 14 hours are through. Like we gave you a bottle to piss in and fixed up a noose on the crossbeam. Christ, what more can we do? So if you struggle to breathe any moment that you aren't asleep, then remember, most of Americans fear for their savings, fear for their shelter, fear for their babies. You aren't the fringe of exception, but rather a perfect example of capital's rule. And you're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. You're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. I see you crying in your cars, but I do.
chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously,
No.
we're fucked. We are
Right.
fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Welcome if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
What up, folks? There's another episode of INN News with your boys, Reef Breland, Collin Radix-Carter, a.k.a. Care Bear. Yeah.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
I'm doing okay. I'm tired. For some reason, I feel like all my energy just didn't exist this week, So, Toofies, I went yesterday, wisdom tooth with like a nice curved root and some tooth decay in the one in front of it. But I think the one in front of it, I had like a filling put in, like in high school that came out. And I just never, didn't even realize it came out. You know what I mean? So that's probably that one with the decay in it. So, but they say you're muted, but I hear you. Yeah. Let me check Discord's output. That's why. Okay, let me fix that. There you go. Now people can hear you.
Thank you.
Weird. Cool. He was asking me about my toofies, which I told people about my toofies. So now we're here. This is Care Bear. Everyone knows Care Bear. Say hi to the people, Care Bear. We brought some stories. Wanted to get into that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So sorry guys, I apologize. I'm kind of I worked out before this, and per usual, I ran home in order to get here in time, and I was still late.
You gotta get your cardio in.
I did do cardio today.
Yeah, okay.
My transaction is starting me on cardio, so
double cardio. Look at you doing it.
I walked to the gym, which is like a 10-minute walk from my house, and then did the assault bike for like 5 minutes at the end of my workout.
Dude, those fucking things. I got one of those. They are brutal.
And then I walked back home. Well, walked home.
Yeah.
Took a quick shower and then jumped on the computer here. Anyway, digress. So we're going to talk about James Baldwin, famous African American author. We've mentioned James in previous episodes, but
big fan. Never read any of his books though.
What's that?
Never read his books though. I mean, I couldn't even tell you what he authored.
They're definitely worth a read if you haven't. And a lot of his books are pretty short. You could probably read them depending how fast you read. Maybe within a couple of days, just if you're really getting into them. But yeah, but he's definitely worth a read in terms of learning more about, African American history, definitely in the time of the civil rights movement in particular. But he lived abroad for a bit towards the latter end of his life because he basically felt that this country
America was. He was right.
And he was so right. But I think I would argue he was also kind of spot on in terms of thinking about the duopoly in terms of how that affected him and African Americans in this country, and was able to articulate that in a way that I don't think he's kind of slept on now. I think people are kind of reawakening to what he talked about when he was alive. But I think a lot of the stuff that he talked about, especially given foreign affairs, is still applicable today. So he didn't talk a lot about Palestine, but he did have some thoughts. And I had an article that I've been holding on to for the last couple of weeks that I wanted to share. And then later on tonight, we're going to talk about Congo and this guy who he's a very bad man. I will say that.
Bad man.
But yes, but just his ties to Israel and Congo, and he's currently sanctioned given his corruption regarding the cobalt mines that are in Congo and how that is affecting the genocide there, and how the Biden administration is talking about releasing those sanctions in order to obtain the minerals that are in Congo for essentially electric vehicles here. So there's some ish regarding this that has kind of gone under the radar, but since
Gaza,
everyone online is kind of talking about like, why are you so focused on Gaza? Like there are issues in Congo. Well, we've talked about Congo plenty on this show, and I have another story that no one's going to necessarily talk about, and nobody's necessarily going to do marches for. But we're going to do our job in kind of sharing stories that are not as well known. So we're going to report on that later. And what do you have, Reef?
I've got a story by Craig Murray about people and their Islamophobia and how that's ignorant. Ignorant. Is ignorant. So, or as you should
have that Michael Jackson South Park.
Ignorant. No, Chris. No, that's ignorant.
Yes.
Anyway, or as your people would say, ignorant. But yeah, that's I brought some slam poetry for that. It's gonna be good. So keep your hats on for that. And then we're gonna talk about the Assange appeal, whether that's a win or not. I think you probably know how we're gonna feel. But nice little artwork. You can get that on a button if you show up to Misty's event Friday. I think that's when that's happening. So somebody will yell at me if that's not the case, but very nice. But yeah, and you also brought extra story, I do believe, right?
Yeah. So I do have an extra story tonight. Yeah, we've been away for a week, and you got extra content. So we are going to talk about Morehouse. I did a very, very long segment on Morehouse at least 2 or 3 weeks ago now. So I did want to follow up in terms of the issue then was some students were not happy with Biden giving the commencement, and they aired their grievances with the school president, Well, as you could imagine and probably guess, Biden did end up going to their commencement. And I would argue not much amounted from that. There were some cute, and I'll emphasize cute, protesting, but nothing really that was disruptive. And I saw, yeah, like we talked about Howard. We talked about Howard last year and how they didn't do anything regarding Biden when he spoke at their commencement. Morehouse did slightly better, but nothing to the point that we have seen on other campuses before. But so we'll get into that first. But before we do that,
if you want to leave us super chats, you can scan this QR code. You can put !donate in the chat if you're watching live, or you can go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. There's a little tip there. This is how we do super chats now. Because you monetize us, so feel free to leave us some money there, or you can go to Rockfin and Rumble, and we are monetized there. I will link that for people in the chat. It will also be at our Linktree in the description below. If you would like to sub to us on separate platforms, opposite YouTube, and these people have already supported us. Look at all of you up there. Little Hall of Fame want to do that, but like I said, Rumble, Rockfin, rumble.com/G/Indie News Network, right? Patreon.com/Indie News Network. If you want to do a little monthly thing, that's also appreciated. Or you can just give directly at Cash App $Indie News Network. But we appreciate that Ko-fi, definitely. But you wanted to get to this, right? This is what you were talking about?
Yes.
Morehouse.
Yeah. So I titled this "Hold Your Head Down." There's a reason why I called it that. You'll find out in a minute. But yeah, so I wanted to give an update regarding what happened at Morehouse's commencement, since Biden spoke at their commencement over the weekend. We talked extensively regarding some Morehouse students airing their grievances with the school president regarding how they didn't want Biden, speaking, given his political record, and especially given what is going
History
on
of racism
in Gaza right now. And the school president basically said, we will take your grievances to account. And obviously they didn't, because Biden still came and spoke. So I'm sure many of you saw, I know a lot, some of you, I know Sabi talked about this. I know Due Dissonance talked about this commencement on their streams. I want to highlight some things that they might not have talked about, or at least go into it a little bit more. Obviously, we know about Biden speaking. We're not going to do that because his speech was trash. I kind of want to talk about some of the things, and I find it, some of it I can argue it was definitely protests, and then some regarding the commencement, not so much. I'll call it protest light at best, but it really wasn't anything disruptive that would have made Biden uncomfortable, I would say. So, so our first clip tonight, I want to play actually what happened at the baccalaureate service the night before commencement.
Luckily, Biden has always just felt uncomfortable around a large group of Black people, so at least there's that.
True. True. But I do want to highlight the baccalaureate service that happened at Morehouse the day before. So it was 2 hours, so we're not going to play the whole thing. I do want to highlight a part of it where the Reverend Reginald Wayne Sharp Jr. spoke at. I believe he's a pastor at a church. I believe he's a senior pastor at a church based in Chicago, I believe, that when I checked on him, but he is a Morehouse alum. So he was asked to give the main speech at the baccalaureate. So it's a 40-minute speech, so we're obviously not going to watch the whole thing. But I'm going to pull apart from a clip that I wouldn't say went viral, but this was what was featured on Twitter over the weekend. I'm gonna play a little bit more of it, just to give some guys a little bit of context into what he was saying. But what he was saying regarding, kind of taking a jab at Biden / the Morehouse administration in his way. So we'll watch that first, and then I definitely have some thoughts on it. I know you definitely had some thoughts on it when I think you watched it. But we'll talk about it once we finish. So you can go ahead.
Count how many extra syllables are added on to words, just for people at home. This is just me growing up in the South around churches. I very much appreciate the extra syllables on this.
Yeah, so warning, that is going to be like the black Pentecostal
the good stuff
tone to this week. So yeah, go ahead.
Because when you face them days, you better remember who the Lord is. He'll lift your head. Can we just back into the verse? Can we just back into it? I don't want to drive. I want to reverse into the verse.
Hold on. I mean,
go to the end. It says the lifter of mine head, which literally means God will alter our focus. 2 Samuel 15:30, David is walking up the mountain with the cloak over his head because he's so stressed. He's so sad. He's so depressed that his head is bowed and his spirit is low. But somewhere between 2 Samuel 15:30 and Psalm 3:3, God became the lifter.
God.
And you do know, before we rejoice over the fact that God will lift our heads, can we acknowledge the fact that there are some real realities that cause us to drop our heads? When we see a 23-year-old black U.S. airman gunned down by police in his own home, it'll make you drop your head. When we see millions of dollars invested in building Cop City here in Atlanta while displacing black families to build a mock city for police training, it can make you hold your head down. When Donald Trump can possibly become president again with 4 federal indictments, 88 federal charges against him, he's been in court more than he's campaigned, it can make you hold your head down. And I know some of y'all don't agree like me. It's all right when you preach your sermon, preach it the way you want to preach it. But today I'm going to preach mine the way God told me to preach it. Yeah. When the United States continues to send billions of dollars to fund weapons to Israel, it'll make you hold your head down. When almost 35,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, while 1,200 people have been killed in Israel, it'll make you hold your head down. When institutions who taught us to be socially conscious turn and ask for us to become conveniently silent, it'll make you hold your head down. When just this past week, a 4th grader dies by suicide because of bullying, revealing our nation is in the midst of a mental health crisis. And prayers and church alone will not heal every mental illness. We need Christ and a couch, theology and therapy, meditation and medication. It'll make you hold your head down. When we see peaceful protesters attacked and carried away like animals, all while some others with the complexion for the protection are taken by Burger King after murdering 9 people in Bible study in Charleston, South Carolina, it'll make you hold your head down. On the 70th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education this weekend, schools in black and brown communities received $23 billion less than schools in white neighborhoods. It'll make you hold your head down. When you can ban books about black history in Florida but can't ban assault rifles in Tennessee to protect our children while they're in school, it'll make you hold your head down.
What would Malcolm say about that?
And if all of that in the world isn't enough, just trying to wake up black. Breathing while black, driving while black, dreaming while black. The daily stress of life. I'm almost done. I know y'all ready to go eat.
All right. So just to kind of say again, he's not the valedictorian. This is not the commencement service. This is the baccalaureate service that took place the day before commencement. So this is Reverend Sharp. He's a Morehouse alum. So he was asked to speak at this
event
ceremony the day before. So he was the key speaker for this, just to kind of give context for people who are a little confused. But anyway, I do want to talk about his speech a little bit and I wanted to play the whole thing because he kind of mentioned, well, I'll say this. Initially, the clip that I saw on Twitter, you can make the case that, yeah, he said a lot of the right things there, but I didn't notice after I did watch most of his speech over the weekend, and I noticed in it, especially when he got to this part, that he called out Trump easily, but in terms of his indictments and all that kind of stuff, and just the idea of democracy is in peril, but he didn't call out Biden by name in terms to what he was doing. And I wonder if that was on purpose. And I actually mentioned this to Savvy on Twitter. I have the suspicion, and I could be wrong, but I suspect that he might have been told, given that Biden was going to speak, to not say anything about him directly. You could talk around it, but not directly say his name. And you're right. The person to his right was the school president who the students called out in the clip that we talked about or kind of focused on.
I kind of got that. I kind of got the vibe of that guy who tells Larry David his parents were slave owners on NPR at PBS. That's what that guy looked like to me. But that's just, any black guy with giant Coke bottle glasses, I feel like, ends up looking like that at some point. But that's just me. That's the acceptable black guy they let on PBS,
Right. So, but yeah, so compared to what we've seen at Columbia and then like other schools where they really went in, like in regarding their protests and really became disruptive, this, I would argue, this was a very tepid way. I can't even call this a protest at all. Like, it wasn't anything where it was just played very safe, at least on campus. I'll get to more of what was happening outside later, which mainstream media will not necessarily talk about. But anyway, I do want to highlight this article from Common Dreams that did talk about what happened at Morehouse. So this was written by Julia Conley, and she writes, Morehouse students showed solidarity with Gaza during Biden commencement speech. It is my stance as a Morehouse man, they as a human being, to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, said valedictorian D'Angelo Fletcher. So that clip went viral when he said that, and that was probably featured. You probably saw that on Twitter. So Julia continues. Advisors for U.S. President Biden reportedly saw Morehouse College, an historically black men's college in Atlanta where he gave the commencement address Sunday, as a school where the president was unlikely to face protests over his continued support for Israel's assault on Gaza, which has been the subject of mass demonstrations led by students at universities across the country over the past month. And they were right. For all intents and purposes, they were right. Because as I said, their protest was very weak. And that's me being nice. But students and faculty made clear at the ceremony that many of them, like others in higher education, are intent on sending Biden a strong message of disapproval over his Israel policy.
Strongly worded letters.
Yes. A number of faculty members and students wore kefefes, the traditional scarves worn in parts of the Middle East, including Palestine, and by some supporters of Palestinian rights to show solidarity with civilians in Gaza. Others displayed the Palestinian flag on their graduation gowns.
Good for them.
So this is Celine Rang, who actually, I think she's a local reporter based in Atlanta. So she took video of when Biden's introduced to give Morehouse College commencement. The alumni basically in the hats all singing to the front, but all the students sit into the back of them. So it gives the appearance that everyone is standing, but the students stay seated. So if you want to play that clip so you can see.
But all the kids over here.
All the kids are over there to the right. And all the alumni to the left.
Thank you.
Standing up and clapping for Biden.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. President Thomas, faculty, staff, alumni. A special thanks. And that's all the folks who helped you get here. Your mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers. All those who got you here. All the way in the back. Please, parents, grandparents, all will help. Stand up because we owe you a debt of gratitude. All the family.
Yeah. So they show their protest by staying seated when he got up. Okay. So, all right. So the war in Gaza, where Israel has killed more than 35,000 since October, while receiving billions of dollars in military aid from the Biden administration, was directly mentioned by valedictorian DeAngelo Fletcher, who had placed a Palestinian flag motif on his graduation cap. It is my stance as a Morehouse man, nay, as a human being, to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, said Fletcher, as Biden sat behind him and applauded. So, yeah, most of you probably saw that Biden applauded when he saw that, and when he said that, and it's just kind of like, well, bruh, are you even listening to what he's saying? You know, like, but then I noticed later, and I'm not sure if people talked about this, that Biden, in his speech, called for an immediate ceasefire. He didn't call for a permanent one.
No.
So just some of the rhetoric and not entirely what people are pushing for is what he used. But still not saying anything as far as a permanent ceasefire, given what is happening in Gaza. Anyway, from the comfort of our homes, we watch an unprecedented number of civilians mourn the loss of men, women, and children while calling for the release of all hostages. Some students and faculty turned their backs when the president gave his address, in which he said he supports peaceful, nonviolent protests. Yeah, like, you support that because that's not going to make you feel uncomfortable at all.
Right.
So the idea of protest is to make...
That's only for the Palestinian people. If it's the Israelis that are counter-protesting, being paid to counter-protest and violently attack others, that's fine. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Right. Other students walked out of the ceremony, but Biden's speech was not disrupted like the last time he addressed a group of college students at George Mason University when protesters interrupted him 10 times. Biden has been rebuked by First Amendment advocates for suggesting the Palestinian solidarity and anti-war protests that have spread across college campuses in recent weeks are inherently against aggressive police responses to protests at schools, including Emory University, Columbia University, and UT at Austin. It is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That's why I call for an immediate ceasefire to stop the fighting. Bring the hostages home, said the president, adding that he is working around the clock to ensure a two-state solution in the Middle East and to ensure aid is allowed into Gaza, where key border crossings are now closed by Israel. So Bibi doesn't want a two-state solution. So how are you planning to secure a two-state solution when Bibi doesn't want that, sir?
Ain't doing shit.
Right. So, yeah. A majority of Americans disapprove of Israel's assault on Gaza, and Black voters, a key constituency who supported Biden in 2020, are no exception. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace found last month that 68% of Black Americans wanted the U.S. to demand an immediate and permanent ceasefire, and 59% said conditions must be applied to U.S. military aid to Israel to ensure the Middle Eastern country is using U.S. weapons for legitimate self-defense and in a way that is consistent with human rights standards. While 66% of Black Americans overall said their feelings toward Biden have not changed due to his Israel policy, that's kind of high to me, especially given Israel's tie to the police here. Yes. Those under age 30 were more likely to say their views on the president had become more negative since October. So just to give more examples of what protests were shown at commencement. So at Amberisms tweeted, this was a video, but I just took the screenshot. It's this Morehouse professor pointing to the divest sign as Biden speaks for me, and the Congo flag that you noticed that you probably saw behind him. And we'll get into Congo, as I said, much later in the show. So we talked. So basically, at Morehouse, at least at their commencement, there was a whole lot of nothing. Like the most people did was turn their backs at Biden, which, given what the pictures I saw, were not too many. No one walked out. No one was disruptive. It wasn't the shenanigans that we've seen on college campuses. That being said, though, and this is something that mainstream media will not report on, there were some shenanigans going outside campus. So this is from Senyabu Ramu at Senior Clark, who I guess is a citizen journalist, I guess. At least she was in Atlanta over the weekend. So she did several tweets where she talked about the protests that were happening outside and around Morehouse. So she tweeted, around 200 Palestinian protesters on the intersection of Joseph E. Lowry and Atlanta Student Movement Boulevard Southwest chanting, APD, KKK, IDF is all the same. So she continues, protesters are chanting every time the media lies and they have a neighborhood in Rafah die down Sells Avenue towards Morehouse College, where Biden is set to speak shortly. So here's some videos she took of passersby honking and with the protesters. Yeah, so there are some protesters there. And she continues tweeting, about half a dozen prison transport vans had arrived in contrast to the Palestinian protesters at Morehouse campus. Resistance is justified, they chant. So just in case there was some shenanigans, Atlanta was ready. So these are the vans that they had on the ready, just in case there were to be some things happening.
Old paddy wagons.
Yeah. So a little more with the police. Atlanta police is here smoking vapes with zip ties on hand. So you can play this.
Got zip ties.
have memories of 4 years ago. I'm just
Yeah.
standing there. Just standing there with zip ties. Again, just prepared. For, yeah. So so I want to play this. This is from Mary. This clip. There are a couple of clips from Mary Hooks. Apparently, she introduced herself to Senyabu as the president of Black Lives Matter Atlanta at the Palestinian rights. So she interviewed her real quick, and here's what she had to say regarding Biden going to Morehouse to speak at their commencement.
The greatest threat is militarism, capitalism, and racism. And Morehouse has betrayed that legacy. So no, fuck Morehouse. On the record. And I am saying not the students. The students have been righteous. Always the spear of our movements. Always the one on the right side of history. Fuck Morehouse and the administration and the people in power that actually got the position to do something, to stand for something, to be about something, beyond just giving money to Israel and the police and thinking you're doing the right thing. If your vision is that as far as you get, then you don't deserve to be head of Morehouse. You don't deserve to claim any sort of leadership in this city or this country, for that matter. No, fuck Morehouse.
Agreed.
Sorry, I went off a little bit.
Don't be sorry.
But what do you have to say about Morehouse administration supporting protests behind closed doors, but in public sending out police and going on news stations saying that they actually don't support protests?
Unfortunately, I couldn't see her response there, but I can answer for you. They're cowards.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight up cowards. You know,
Public
like
and
a lot
private positions, as always.
Right. So I do have another clip from her because she continues to go off. So here she goes. She continues regarding something else, but
Genocide, Joe, our raggedy president has given billions of dollars in the tradition of the U.S., have given billions of dollars to fund this genocide in Palestine. Our police officers are literally going over to Israel, training with these murderers.
Yes.
85 acres of land right behind the Starlight Drive-In to build a militarized training center. And they want to do this in the face of black people with all of this suffering we see in the street. They won't wink out billions of dollars in reparations. They ain't build out billions of dollars to cure, the homeless problem. They ain't shelled out billions of dollars, to take care of the healthcare system. You know what I mean? The homeless, all of it. And it's
crazy. You feel me? What do we deal with? The money that we send across states and across seas that we don't get over here, that we make over here? Come on, it's crazy.
And the only thing they got for our communities that's been needing healing is the police. When our people been needed programs, when our people been needed ways, to get involved, to get good education, a righteous education. But all they do is send the police. They ain't got nothing better for our people than to cage and to control our people.
This is an example. How long these folks been in America? And how long black people done been in America? But yet they gonna jump out and fight for their right. That's some shit that we need to do, you feel me? That's how these folks out here sticking together for their country, for their rights, you feel me? But we been here since birth. We ain't doing it.
And we been doing it. Oh yeah, we have. Oh, we been doing it.
We gotta do it like this. We gotta do it like this and not quit and not give up.
So what you feel like we need from our black men? What would you like to speak from your brother?
We need more politicians from our black people. We don't have none of us in office. I've been looking at power, and they got what his name, Rashad Tate in office, man. But he was doing stuff. We got to get a Rashad Tate in office, man. We got to get somebody that's gonna work for us. Rock did something, but he ain't do enough. You feel me? We still out here going through property, dealing with mental issues, dealing with homeless, dealing with gang violence, gun violence. It's crazy. It's getting worse. You feel me? Every time you look on the news, more than like 2-3 people done got shot. Not just one, not just two, not just.
I will advise him. We don't need no more politicians, homie. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But this is regular folks.
You don't need to take that whole power back, not just the power they think you can have.
This is regular folks. Though. These are the people that I talk to, or at least have access to, and they see. And I mentioned this on Twitter.
They know what's up.
People are seeing like because the idea of people saying like, oh, it takes forever and a day to implement policy, progressive policy on the federal level, it doesn't have to, because we're seeing, politicians like over the past few weeks working overtime to ensure Israel gets more weapons, Israel gets more money, Ukraine gets this gets that. We're seeing money go out the door to these foreign nations. Meanwhile, anything regarding healthcare, homelessness, fill in the blank, politicians cannot get their acts together. But when it comes to Israel, and again, we know why, money is going out the door basically every waking moment. But so people are seeing this and they're making the connections that, oh, you're able to send money to Israel for weapons, but you can't deal with the poverty issues that have been in our cities and in our towns forever. You're able to send money to Israel, but you can't deal with healthcare in this country, and this is and especially given that this is happening on the local level, this is why I tell people, as far as electoralism, you cannot hope for a politician to come in and try to do all the things that you want without dealing with the rot that's in the system first. And no one has necessarily spoken to how they're going to uproot the rot, even the politicians that we like. So sorry, not sorry, but I know Indy, wrote a Substack regarding this, regarding, two, commentators in this space that we're not going to give promo to. You guys know who they are. But the idea that they are kind of clamoring around, and then a third-party candidate, which, considering what they've said, or not what they have said regarding the Green Party, forever, it's very weird that all of a sudden that Gaza apparently was their red line, and now they're singing
some
praises
new ones in that group too.
of the Green Party.
Yep.
I told you not to give her promo.
What? I'm not. It's Sticks, bro. I gotta play Sticks. Who doesn't love Sticks? I mean, I could have gone with Mr. Roboto. It's a great band, bro.
But point being is that these are regular schmegular people who are seeing the money going out the door, and it's not being used here in terms of the needs within the local community, or at least trickling down to the local community, other than, like, as Mary said, hiring more police, which again is happening under Biden right now, not under Trump.
Yeah.
So I do want to end with this regarding Morehouse, and as Mary said, can't blame the students. I mean, I can, honestly, because, and I've said this, I get the fear, especially as a person of color protesting, because we have a lot more to lose, especially given what's at stake, especially as Black men. But however, you have the whole world in your favor if you walk out.
The whole wide
you didn't have
world.
to sit there. You didn't have to sit there. You could have just left. And the threat that the president gave was, oh, if anyone disrupts, we're going to cancel commencement. Fine. Cancel it. You're not going to get your diplomas until a month or two anyway. So what? Stand for something. This was a school where MLK went to. And notice how people did not move, and especially given that it was Malcolm X's birthday on Sunday as well. You didn't walk in that tradition in terms of actually standing up for something. Morehouse, come on now. So as I said, Howard did shit last year, and Morehouse didn't do much better, to be quite honest. But I'll end with friend of the show, Black in the Empire. Don't think we've read any of his tweets for a while,
In a
but
while.
I think he sums up what happened at Morehouse perfectly, where he says, "Only in America can a man who worked with segregationists to fight busing, wrote and pushed the laws that led to Black mass incarceration, and be provided the weapons for the genocide, give a commencement address at a Black college like nothing ever happened."
Amen.
So, I mean, sorry, Morehouse, but you guys were terrible in terms of actually using your leverage to actually make moves and actually stand in solidarity. And even with the article, it said you stood for solidarity. Yeah, you did it in a way that Biden was okay with. You know, it's protests are meant to be chaotic. Sorry. So, and I get it in terms of what that meant for you, in terms of your possibly, giving your futures and all, but I don't know. It was just very frustrating overall, but
I hear you.
But anyway, why you end the segment, please?
I mean,
I'm just really livid right now, honestly. Now
I feel you, dude. Well, if you're just as angry as Collin is, and you want to throw your money at the problem, throw it at us. Code.com/Indie News Network. Scan that QR code on your screen as well, or put !donate in the chat if you want to leave us a super chat. That would be nice, but if you can't give that way, like, subscribe, share the video. Very easy stuff to do. Leave a comment, tell us what you think, and keep doing you. All right, Rockfin and Rumble, and then go check your next story, right?
Yeah. And no crap, we are now getting to Baldwin, so you didn't miss anything.
Baldwin.
Yeah.
Anna Mayer's holding it down on the Rockfin. He said, "Doing my best." Wait, Collin, there's a politician you like? I mean, not in this country. I'll tell you that right now.
Me?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Is there a politician? If there's a politician I like?
Right.
No.
Yeah,
No.
I knew that answer.
No.
But yeah, everyone go over and say hi to Anna Mears on the Rockfin.
If I meet a politician that I like, I'll let you know. But no, and I will say this real quick. It's the idea that people feel like, oh, we have to air our grievances. We have to reach out to the politicians. Oh,
Yeah,
by the way,
no.
I can't see green.
Okay.
There you go. That we have to reach out to our politicians to air out our grievances and make the case as far as things that we need. No, we shouldn't be doing that. They're public servants. They should be coming to us and being like, tell me what you need, and I will do my damnedest to fight for you in order to get those needs. That's what politicians should be doing in order to reach out to constituents, not constituents, making any type of noise at all to get the attention of politicians to actually listen to us. No, it's backwards.
Yeah.
They should be coming to us. And until actual politicians who are genuine and being able to do that, then, there's no reason to stand by them unless they prove to us by their actions that they stand for us. And when I meet that politician, I'll let you know who that is. I haven't met them yet, even locally. And I not work, but I've interacted with many of my local politicians in DC, and they ain't worth shit either, honestly.
Yep.
So
this guy wasn't shit. Good dude, James Baldwin. I watched, I think, multiple versions of him on the Dick Cavett show and other shows back then. Had a lot to say to people. Most of it I liked. So, well ahead of his time. But
yeah,
you're reading some of his views on Palestine.
Yeah. So he didn't say much, but what he said about Palestine, I think, was very spot on. And given that he ended up moving abroad to Europe later in life and being able to kind of note the connections as far as oppression in the world, I think his words were very timely. And just personally, I actually have a picture of him above my computer, actually, so I see him every day.
Nice.
But I love when he speaks, so I definitely wanted to find a clip of him speaking. And I find one that actually does apply, well, liberation in general, but what he says definitely applies to Palestinians if you change the color.
Look at that, Dick Cavett.
Of,
Very young Dick
Yep.
Cavett.
so you probably have seen, many of you probably seen this clip floating around, but I wanted to play this. I think this will kind of give a good appetizer for what we're going to read regarding what he said regarding Palestine later. So you can go ahead, Reef.
If we were white, if we were Irish, if we were Jewish, if we were Poles, if we had, in fact, in your mind, a frame of reference, our heroes would be your heroes too. Nat Turner would be a hero for you instead of a threat. Malcolm X might still be alive. And everyone is very proud of brave little Israel, a state against which I have nothing. I don't want to be misinterpreted. I'm not an anti-Semite. But, when the Israelis pick up guns, or the Poles, or the Irish, or any white man in the world says, give me liberty or give me death, the entire white world applauds. When a black man says exactly the same thing, word for word, he is judged a criminal and treated like one, and everything possible is done to make an example of this bad nigger so there won't be any more like him.
Right. So
still applies.
Yes. Still.
Yeah.
Just, he mentioned Israelis, but as Reverend Shark said, complexion for the protection. So if you are melanin deficient, I would say, it's easy for you to say, I have a right to defend myself, right? It's a lot harder if you're a little more melanated to say that.
Mm-hmm. And this goes for all those Gadsden flag flyers too out there. I see you. Those don't tread on me people.
Right.
Like those melanated people got straps too. I'm just saying.
Right.
Be careful out there. This shit goes both ways, dog. Anyway.
So I wanted to read this article. This article is actually from 2014. From socialistrecord.org, written by Paul Heidman, who writes How Baldwin Saw Palestine. So let's get into it in terms of what he wrote. With bombs again exploding Palestinian homes and lives in Gaza. Oh, but wait, I thought the bombs started.
I thought it was October 7th.
I know,
God,
but this article was written in 2014.
Are you telling me the media in Israel would lie to us? That seems so unlikely.
Oh, wow.
Crazy. July. That's wild. What year?
2014.
2014. Man, how did they miss that? They must have missed
that. It is helpful, or comforting at least, to return to the classic works of the struggle against Zionism. Edward Said's Zionism from the standpoint of its victims comes to mind here, as do the poems of Mahmoud Darwish. One writer who isn't often classed as part of this tradition, but should be, is James Baldwin. Here's a passage from Baldwin's last novel, Just Above My Head, 1978, in which he addresses the subject of terrorism. Well, can you zoom in? Because this
is hard. Yes, I can.
There you go. Thank you. I was traveling before the days of electronic surveillance, before the hijackers and terrorists arrived. For the arrival of these people, the people in the seats of power have only themselves to blame. Who indeed has hijacked more than England has, for example, or who is more skilled in the uses of terror than my own unhappy country? Yes, I know. Nevertheless, children, what goes around comes around. what you send out comes back to you. A terrorist is called that only because he does not have the power of the state behind him. Indeed, he has no state, which is why he is a terrorist. Scroll down, please. The state at bottom, and when the chips are down, rules by means of a term made legal. That is how Franco ruled so long, and it is the undeniable truth concerning South Africa. No one called the late J. Edgar Hoover a terrorist, though that is precisely what he was. And if anyone wishes now, in this context, to speak of civilized values or democracy or morality, you are pardon this old ninja if he puts his hand before his mouth and snickers if he laughs at you. I've endured your morality for a very long time and still crawled out of that dung heap. All that the slave can learn from his master is how to be a slave, and that is not morality.
Yep.
Reading this passage today, one is struck by its prescience. 20 years before 9/11, Baldwin eviscerated Bush, and now Obama's pious apologies for the war on terror.
War on terror.
The contemporary relevance of the passage, however, can obscure its own context, which is just as notable. Baldwin's emphasis here on stateless peoples and hijackings make it clear that the occasion for his reflections is the Palestinian struggle, which during the 1970s especially took the form of hijackings meant to draw international attention to the occupation. Palestine came to be a prominent issue during the Black Power years, as Black radicals are identified with anti-colonial movements embrace the Palestinian struggle against Israel. For more on this story, check out Alex Lupin's Geographies of Liberation. This embrace led to allegations of anti-Semitism, which were not always justified against Black Power figures like Malcolm X, for example, ultimately culminating in Johnson's publication's decision to shut down Black World, an important Black cultural and political journal, over a supposedly anti-Semitic article about Zionism. In this context, Baldwin's writings on the subject, though brief, display a remarkable clarity, as he unhesitantly declares that Israel represents imperialism, not Jewish self-determination. Thus, it is in 1972, in his essay, Take Me to the Water, Baldwin recounted his reasons for not settling in Israel when he became an expatriate in the late 1940s. And if I had fled to Israel, a state created for the purpose of protecting Western interests, I would have been in a yet tighter bind. On which side of Jerusalem would I have decided to live? Here, Baldwin displays an awareness that, in 1948, most of the left still lacked. When he made the decision to flee the US, Baldwin realized he could scarcely accomplish his goal by settling in a country than replicating our own bloody frontier days. Indeed, Baldwin's clarity on this question stands out from almost any analysis on the left during the period of Israel's birth. Stalinism, in particular, played a destructive role here, as the USSR's eagerness for an ally in the region led it to jump in as the second country to recognize Israel. The first, of course, was the United States. In its wake, Stalinists and their fellow travelers across the world refused to take a principled stand for Palestinian self-determination. Baldwin, always an iconoclast, took a different route. Baldwin's most substantial writing on Palestine came in 1979 with his open letter to the born again. This letter was occasioned by Jimmy Carter's dismissal of Martin Luther King's former aide, Andrew Young, from his position as ambassador to UN because of his decision to meet with a Palestinian Liberation Organization delegation. Baldwin is clear on the circumstances of Israel's birth.
Say that 5 times fast. The Palestinian Delegation of Liberation Organization. That was a mouthful.
PLO. Jews and Palestinians know of broken promises. From the time of the Balfour Declaration during World War I, Palestine was under 5 British mandates, and England promised the land back and forth to the Arabs or the Jews, depending on which horse seemed to be in the lead. the Zionists, as distinguished from the people known as the Jews, using, as someone put it, the available political machinery, i.e., colonialism, e.g., the British Empire, promised the British that if the territory were given to them, the British Empire would be safe forever. But absolutely no one cared about the Jews, and it is worth observing that non-Jewish Zionists are very frequently anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
Baldwin goes on to speak of Europe's history of anti-Semitism, the civilizational links between the Inquisition and Franco. The situation in Palestine, he makes clear, is not the result of terrorism or Jewish malfeasance, but European imperialism. But the state of Israel was not created for the salvation of the Jews. It was created for the salvation of Western interests. This is what is becoming clear. I must say it was always clear to me. The Palestinians have been paying for the British colonial policy of divide and rule, and for Europe's guilty Christian conscience for more than 30 years. The collapse of the Shah not only revealed the death of pious Carter's concern for human rights, it also revealed who supplied oil to Israel and whom Israel supplied arms. It happened to be, to spell it out, white South Africa. So this was back in the 70s that Baldwin was calling this out regarding the, I guess at that point, soon to be, if not already established, apartheid in South Africa given that time, and how Israel's tied to it. Baldwin's sharp sense of geopolitics, his grasp of the Gulf, which separates Jewishness from Zionism, and his willingness to locate the source of the problem in 1948 for more than 30 years, all would put him on the left edge of the Palestinian solidarity movement today. 30 years ago in the United States, he must have felt as if he resided in the most desolate political wilderness. Studied today as a writer of sexuality and gender, or civil rights, Baldwin's international radicalism remains in the hinterland. Those of us struggling to make good on his vision of real justice in the Middle East have a right and a duty today to claim Baldwin's voice for our side, and in doing so, help bring his radicalism the recognition it deserves. So any thoughts? Short, but I think very poignant.
I think so too.
Any thoughts?
I mean, it sounds like he was right on, way too early for his time. I've heard Baldwin talk about all sorts of stuff, religion as well, right? I think the classic one is where it's like, why would he be nonviolent when, like, that's never been the case for his people? It's always been violence against his. Right. And I think that he speaks to that here as well, right? Where it's, it's the classic, the minute someone with a little more melanin or isn't part of the NATO alliance decides to, stand for themselves, it's no, we need your resources. So, but yeah, good stuff. So I definitely should read more of him. I have yet to do that. At least one, right?
Yeah.
Like at least one. Which book from Baldwin should people read? That's the question.
Well, if you don't want to necessarily read, if those of you who are not readers, I Am Not Your Negro, it would be a good. That came out. When did that come out? 2017. That would be a good book to read. Notes of a Native Son, I think, would be a good start. As well as The Fire Next Time is also a good one. I think I gave The Fire Next Time to Crab as a gift. Yeah. So
Giovanni's Room? I wonder what that is.
Yeah. But I would definitely, if you're wanting to start on Baldwin, I'll say Notes of a Native Son, I think would be a good start for people who are interested to know. And again, many of his short books are very short. They're easy read. But he packs a lot in such a short read, depending on
The Fire Next Time.
Yeah.
Another good one. Okay. Good to know. Well, talking about these things is why we're demonetized. So you can go to kodashfee.com/IndieNewsNetwork. Leave us a tip, a little super chat there. If you're in the live chat, you can put !donate. We'll get your message pulled up on screen for everyone to read. You can also go to Rockfin and Rumble and support us on other platforms if you want. Link in the description below. You can also like and subscribe, hit share, comment. Let us know what you think. What do you think about Baldwin?
Yeah. Also, if you've read any books of his, let us know what title and what you thought. So
yes, please.
It definitely would be worth. Maybe you should do a book club and maybe read one of his book.
Yeah, it would force me to at least read something. Like it's just having the time to read stuff is like, difficult. So it's like you gotta have accountability. But yeah. All right. Ready for our next one? Animators on the Rockfin said that she wishes she could donate, but spent all of her money on water and blankets for her neighbors who lost their homes. The tornado yesterday.
Well,
way better use of your money than giving to us.
Well, and that's what we want you to do. Take care of your neighbor. Take care of your neighbors first. So we definitely appreciate. I make this club almost every week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your neighbors. Take care of your communities first before you give to us. Because
and shout out to those
watching
Midwesterners dealing with all that right now. Apparently, it's crazy tornado season going on. So
there are way more. We are privileged enough that we're able to do this. Really, because we like doing it, and while the money would be helpful, I don't want to say we don't need it because we do. But we also understand there are more pressing things that people need to deal with first before you give us anything. So
we're
as I always say,
the thing you can do is share and try to get us some more subscribers. That's definitely appreciative. We're at like almost 1950.
Which by the way, you guys have been rocking it. I think. Well, our Macklemore clip has been doing extremely well on YouTube right now. That we definitely got more subs as a result of that. I know also Indie went on Hardlands Media last Friday to talk about his Substack article regarding those shall not be named, and the frustration given their endorsement, quote unquote.
So 50 more people, and we're at 2K. So if y'all can make that happen, y'all get gold stars. I'm gonna give out gold stars. If you're over on the Rockfin, let us know you're there by even leaving some words in the chat. Supposedly there's 10 of you over there, so if you're not a lizard person, use those human thumbs, type some stuff. But all right. This is going to be an interesting story, I feel, Collin. So we've been seeing a lot of Islamophobia, I feel, recently, and I wanted to kind of go through the ignorance of that. So Craig Murray writes, in response to the online hate and propaganda he is witnessing, the author tells a brief story that took place in Lahore, Pakistan, about a fortnight ago, right? And we're seeing this in regards to Iranians too. I saw today people were complaining about that. But anyway, Craig Murray, like this right here, right? This guy, Lisa DeBenko, you can already tell it's going to be a terrible tweet by these two flags in it. Burn in hell, you Shaheed supporting Islamic bastard backing Hamas and Hezbollah. Justice served, right? And if you're out here, guy just died. I mean, let the brave get a little cold, would you? Just a little bit.
Right.
Hit Clarenberg, who just made it back on Twitter. Good for you, Clarenberg. Good looking out. Says Financial Times contributor. In case you were wondering what kind of people are at the Financial Times. But Craig Murray continues, the deluge of Islamophobia, like we saw earlier on social media, unleashed by supporters of the Gaza genocide, have been profoundly shocking. There's one reason I am very sorry that Hosba Yusuf was forced out as First Minister of Scotland, as he was a particular target, and his ousting will have encouraged the bigot. On Twitter and Facebook, I frequently receive comments suggesting that I should go and live in an Islamic country from people evidently unaware that I have previously, or that I should meet Hamas or the Taliban from people, again, unaware that I have previously, who would behead me, or that Muslims wish to kill all Muslims. Craig Murray, if you're watching, I do believe you still have your head on your shoulders, so that didn't happen.
Right. Also, fun fact, I visited Morocco. I visited Jordan.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Very lovely places, I hear.
Very lovely. And because it's the idea, and I kind of saw this on Twitter earlier today, that some blue chat mark made a comment that Arabs do not like black people. Very general statement. And I was just kind of like, well, I know plenty of Arab people, and I've been to the Arab world, and they were extremely pleasant and extremely hospitable to me, when I visited, both Morocco and Jordan. So,
yeah.
So, not sure. Not my experience, at least.
Well, it's also with the other, group you're a part of, the LGBT, right? They always tell them to go over there too, right? They don't like you over there. We've shown how that's not the case either.
Right.
So, but yeah. So, Craig Murray continues, what strikes me curiously is the sincerity of their Islamophobic beliefs. They really do believe these things because they have been imbued with this hate by absorbing years of propaganda in which Muslims are dehumanized. Craig wants to tell you and them a small story. In Pakistan a fortnight ago, I was in Lahore searching for the house of General Allard, where Alexander Burness spent time. Allard is a fascinating figure, but I do not want to digress here from the point. I did not find Allard's palatial residence, which had been demolished long ago, but I did find the tomb where he and his daughter were buried. The tomb was attached to the house, and my friend Masood Lahari and I were able to do some urban archaeology, discovering that elements of this palace and its outbuildings have been incorporated into much later structures now on the site. We were walking around the dense buildings when a man got off his scooter and invited us into a doorway. Masood told him what we were doing, and he invited us up many winding steps to his attic apartment, where he opened a trapdoor into a roof cavity that revealed a very old structure. His attic apartment was clean, but very sparsely furnished. It had 2 rooms, in one of which his invalid father lay on a bed. In the other, he and his wife had their bed. There were plastic chairs and a table and an incongruously large old fridge. His wife produced dates and nuts and tea and insisted we sit down to drink. The fridge was open, and the entire contents were emptied out for us. There was a delicious half melon, which was diced and put into bowls. A handful of strawberries were crushed and whipped up with milk. Bread was broken, and the very small amount of meat diced and grilled. We tried to refuse some of the hospitality, but plainly to persist in that
can't do it
would have caused enormous offense. It was obvious that this was a household that, by Western standards, was living in great poverty, but every single bit of food available was cleaned out and given to the guests. Our beaming hosts told us of the blessings they received in providing hospitality to strangers. The point is, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well,
no,
that was my experience. In the I would argue that's the experience generally in the global South. And I think mostly it's because, in my travels in the Middle East and Africa, it's the idea that people recognize generally you're coming a long way.
Yeah.
And the idea is you can go anywhere around the world, but you choosing to go to them. To them, that's a very big deal. So
I think it's a very working class thing too, right? Because food is available to you as and not to, it's a very, it's here in the South too, right? tea and biscuits are gonna be out. Like, we're going to find something to feed you with if you're here. So
Right. So, but it's the idea of like, we want to present us in a way that is kind of pleasing to you in that
Yeah.
regard. But I think it's also just the idea of like, it's the honoring of you taking the time to come into their country, their town, whatever, to be a witness to what the country or the people or the culture are like. So,
Right.
like, basically, like when I was in Morocco and especially in Jordan, in the part where I was, they were basically like, if you need anything, like they could be working or what, but they were basically like, if you need anything, here's my number. Call me for no, seriously, like they will drop everything for you.
Yeah.
Like, but they will want to make sure that but essentially they want to make sure that you're having the best possible time as possible. And again, as a Black person, like Arab hospitality is top notch, at least in the times that I visit. So
Well,
the
Craig
idea
Murray
that
agrees
go
with
ahead.
you that, as he's experienced often in Muslim countries, it is typical that Muslim people behave. It is, for example, a fact that the UK Muslims devote a much higher proportion of their income to charity than non-Muslims. Hate is bred of fear, and fear is bred of ignorance. It is tragic that in developed countries, resources are available for war, but not to counter that ignorance. But of course, the hate is deliberately inculcated, and it is required to bolster support for war. From war, the establishment makes a great deal of money and foment yet more hatred from which to bolster their authority. Especially when they send their kids to die, right? But I wanted to point out, this is the kind of stuff that brings this about, right? So this is a former MI5 agent, Annie Macon, I guess. That's how you would do that. Looks Macon details how the Mossad set up a false flag.
If she's Spanish, Macon.
Yeah, bombed the Israeli embassy in London in 1994 and got 2 prominent Palestinian activists to take the blame. Right, so I'm going to let her tell it.
But the 2 cases that really got us, first of all, there was a false flag attack in London in 1994, where a car bomb exploded outside the Israeli embassy in the centre of London.
Now, I remember this vaguely. This is, we're talking 14 years ago.
It's a long time
but
ago.
But it was huge at the time. I mean, it was a huge worldwide story.
Yeah. In fact, there'd been an earlier attack against some Jewish interest section in Buenos Aires earlier that year as well. Similar sort of MO, modus operandi, with a car bomb driven and parked outside that exploded. Very minor injuries, that was all. Okay. Nobody was killed. And it was a very sophisticated device. It appeared to eat itself, eat all the forensics. Now, this is very, very rare. Even the IRA, which is a very sophisticated terrorist organisation, could not make bombs that effective. So it looked like a, sort of fairly technical person had put that together. But what emerged from that, the senior MI5 officer who was in charge of the investigation into it and had seen all the evidence, but also all the intelligence, which isn't necessarily admissible in court, wrote his formal assessment at the end of the case. And he said he reckoned that Mossad, the Israeli External Intelligence Agency, had bombed their own embassy, a sort of controlled explosion outside the embassy. And as I said, that was a senior MI5 officer. That was his formal verdict. If you read that on the internet now, you would say that sounds like some mad conspiracy theory. But it wasn't. This was the official position of MI5. And he said that they did it for 2 reasons. One, they were always hassling MI5 for increased security around their embassy and other interests in London, because, of course, London had a reputation of giving safe haven to Arab dissidents from around the world at that point. And MI5 kept saying, well, there's no reason to increase the threat assessment. You don't need extra protection. So letting off a controlled explosion outside, of course, they immediately got what they wanted there. But crucially, 2 innocent Palestinians were arrested, charged and convicted of conspiracy to cause that attack. And they were very active in a Palestinian support network in London, political campaigning for the people on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And they were gaining some traction in the media. They were getting quite a lot of support. So by arresting these people and framing them for an attack and sticking them in prison, the whole network just shattered and hasn't got back on its feet to this day. So that would be a clear political advantage.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I think stokes that Islamophobia, right? We've talked about time and time again these kind of false flag attacks, you know, from the Olympics that, you know, were attacked, you know, hostage situation, that kind of stuff. I think that was in Germany, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
But I wanted to bring that as just an example of one of the many ways they stoked this kind of fear, especially during the Iraq War, stuff like that. It was all over the place, right? You know, especially after 9/11. But I brought this video, Collin. This is from the NPS finals in 2016. Okay? Right? And, you know, slam poetry, Collin. You gotta love it. Like, bongos, all that fun stuff. It's very lovely. But you heard my reaction to this last night, and you were like, what's that? And you're like, oh, you'll see. Right?
Right.
This is going to be good. So just strap in. You know, again, Poetry Slam Inc. Look, Poetry Slam, I think it's important to play this. So if you want to take, you know, just don't strike us, is all I'm asking. Please. You know, important message getting out here. So if I can full screen it, that would be nice. But let's let these people speak. In Decatur, Georgia.
On June 17th, 2015, Dylan Ruff walked into a midweek Bible study. He sat and prayed with the church members before pulling out his gun, killing most, and allowing one to live. After the incident, he was found and arrested peacefully. When Dylan Ruff killed 9 innocent black people, we did not question his God. He wore flags of apartheid Africa. We did not question his allegiance. He committed the crime alone. We did not question his people. When Adam Lanza shot a classroom full of first graders at Sandy Hook Elementary, we did not ask him to leave the country. When Timothy McVeigh killed 168 people in Oklahoma, we did not call this a crime against every American. When the KKK killed thousands of black people while swearing to uphold Christian morality, we did not ask them to remove their robes. We did not call all Christians bigots. Do you see it? How we don't label all white men based on the sins of a few. Do you see it? How we don't have to condemn a whole class of people based on the actions of some. Do you see it? How all the names are different. How all the faces are different. How all the people are different. Therefore, we should not condemn all Muslims for the radicalism of a group. If you want to persecute ISIS, go ahead. But to persecute ISIS is to persecute those that gave them power. To persecute those that gave them power is to persecute the U.S. government. Do your research. Islam is not synonymous with terror. It is literally submission. It is devotion. It is peace. Terrorism is actually forbidden, and jihad does not mean holy war. It means struggle. It means survival. It means standing face to face with everything that wants to put you in the ground and choosing to be alive. Do your research and stop listening to CNN. Stop trading humanity for hypocrisy. Stop staring at Muslims in the airport. Stop letting your fear drag you into ignorance. Stop supporting billionaire Republicans who want to scare you into murdering the innocent, and start supporting leaders who speak peace in their native tongue. Instead of burning down the mosques, burn down the walls around the pulsating muscle in your chest and realize that we all have one. And lastly, as the customary greeting goes, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Wa alaikum assalam, and upon you be peace. Do you see it?
Dude, holy shit.
Clip that, share that, please.
Yes, sir. I'll be on it. Oh, yeah, that
Desert
killed me
Man
last night.
disagrees to me. Desert Man's agreed.
Yeah. Talking about this is why we're demonetized. So you know what to do.
I don't
Go
think
to
he'll get
go to
I don't
scan
think
this.
we'll get demonetized for that.
We might be. Ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. Put exclamation mark donate in the chat. Scan that QR code. Help us out monetarily. We appreciate it. Share, like, comment. Let us know what you think. So there's a lot going on with that one.
Right, but like I'm glad you played it, and I think that was actually kind of. I'm not sure you knew the Baldwin clip that I played, but I think it kind of goes right into what he was saying in terms of these white people killed a lot of people, and their faith, their humanity was not questioned, even though they did heinous murders, essentially.
Mastermind Hour said they were close, but ISIS is Israeli. In there, they talked about do your research. Who gave them power? Who gave them the power to give them power?
Same thing with Hamas.
Right.
Same thing.
Yep.
They didn't just come out in a vacuum. Bibi gave them that power, and he enlisted them to be in power just so to avoid, to kind of be a wedge between the having a two-state solution. That's why they exist.
Yeah.
So,
but
now
that was
he fed the beast way too much.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've gotten, to the point where they're at right now. But no one talks about how BB essentially funded them.
No.
In order to drive that wedge between the idea of having a two-state solution in that region of the world. So, but yeah, I honestly, I speak with some privilege because I've traveled a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, but enough to kind of have an understanding that, people live differently, and you cannot lump up one people group as something in the same way, people can generalize Black men as scary thugs, name the blank, it wouldn't be fair for anyone to kind of say all Black men are this in the same way that, and I think even now I have to be very careful in just kind of saying all Jews are Zionists, which we know is not true, or all, Arabs are whatever, but I think the other thing is that I think a large part of this, and shout out to Nuno, who a friend of the show who I talk to often, who lives in Europe but is of Arab descent, and we talk about this a lot. There is an isolationist stance in America that tends to think very American in terms of how they view the world. What I mean is very much individualistic, very much typically kind of a privileged stance of, and usually with the cover of whiteness oftentimes, that you can go into a country and kind of think, oh, these people are supposed to cater to me and do things for me. And whereas, for me, whenever I go to a country, especially if it's a new place, I always kind of come in with this stance of I'm a guest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to learn. I'm here to observe. I'm here to learn about your culture. Essentially help me, guide me into what is acceptable or not. So I generally always take that stance whenever I visit really anywhere, but I think especially abroad. And to have that stance, I think gives you more intimacy in terms of knowing who people really are, knowing who they're about, knowing more of their culture. But more importantly, being able to have or at least develop some understanding, or at least being able to talk about issues that here you may not necessarily have those conversations. Like, again, when I was in Jordan, I remember having a lot of conversations regarding politics. When I was, and they were very open to, and not to say that we didn't have disagreements with it, but it was very respectful. It could be heated, but there was an understanding there that we were talking in terms of understanding the perspective of the other. And I came away from those conversations knowing a little bit more about them and knowing a little bit more culture in terms of how they think about things. But I think, honestly, I feel like if more people were willing to do that and make those connections, then I think we would be a lot better off. And I think, and I say that especially for, like, very quick, especially for Jews / Christians who kind of emphasize with the Israel side. More often than not, I always ask, well, have you spoken to a Palestinian? Have you spoken to them in terms of their perspective? And I feel like most of the time that's a no. We kind of know the reason. And so I think we definitely need more experiences. And again, I speak from privilege because I live in a city where it's very much cosmopolitan. You living where you are in the South, it's not as accessible to you.
Yeah.
But I think overall, like generally as a country in America, I think we need to make a better effort of coming out of the bubbles that I think we kind of encase in sometimes, and learn more, or at least be willing to learn more about people who are different from us. I mean,
yeah, no, agreed. I think that I did that naturally, though. You know, like,
yeah, but I
was
know.
always,
I mean,
yeah.
but
Some people
I
do,
know
some people
you,
don't.
and right,
Yeah.
I know, but I think that's also just a part of your character too. So I mean,
Yeah.
just knowing you over the past couple of years, you know, like I've come to know that about you, and like especially with me, you know, you're always kind of prying me in terms of learning more about me, even though many times I don't want you to pry, you
Right.
know, but that I know that's who you are. But I know that in terms of you're doing that to understand who I am and kind of affirm who I am, which I do appreciate in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think if we're able to do that for each other, especially for people who are different from you, you know, I think the world would be a lot better off for it. And, you know, and like I said, you know, especially in the Muslim world, you know, there's a lot of, at least from what I do know, there is a lot of culture and a lot, like, the people that I've met in that world are generally really nice, very respectable, and will bend over backwards to one for your friendship / relationship in whatever it is. But I think especially in terms of the hospitality, they want to make sure that they present themselves
Well, I think
as
that's with the South too, right? That's hospitality's the thing here, allegedly. And
right.
There was a quote that was like something about, you know, the fear of the unknown is fixed through the stomach, right? Where it's like food. I will get Southerners to eat food from places they would never want to go to, you know, but you put that in front of them and they go, oh, all right. You know, like, I think that, especially among poor cultures, like, poor food is poor food. But, like, no matter where you are, like beans and rice, fish, that kind of stuff, things that you can get your hands on, grow yourself. Very big in all those places that we talked about, you know, because that's what you can eat. So I think that stuff bridges gaps for sure. So
yeah.
But yeah, all right. You ready for your next one?
All right. So we're going to do, I wouldn't say a deep dive, but at least kind of give. We want you guys to know about this on the thumbnail. This is Dan Gertlier. He's an Israeli tycoon. He's tied to basically the cobalt industry in Congo. So you're probably wondering, well, why are we talking about this guy? Why are we even bothering? So as we mentioned in the Morehouse segment earlier tonight, you probably saw the Congo flag being raised when Biden was speaking. The Congo flag was above him as he was speaking at the commencement. So that was the subtle way of kind of saying there's a genocide happening in Congo too. I wish that was kind of said outright, but because I think people would miss the here is very key to the genocide that is happening in Congo right now. And Biden is the administration is quietly, because he's under sanctions right now, given his alleged crimes in Congo. But the administration is quietly wanting to release those sanctions for their own profit. Well, what do we mean by that? I'll get to that later. But let's do kind of a deep dive on this guy just to get to know about him a little bit more. So let me try and catch up to you on the slides.
Yeah.
So this is from TRT World. And I'll probably have to read it because it's just subtitled. But let's learn about Dan and who he is about. Israeli billionaire and mining magnate Dan Gertier, who has been sanctioned over alleged corrupt mining practices in the Congo, is in headlines again. This time, the U.S. Treasury has blacklisted a Congolese national and accused him of assisting Gertlier. But who is Dan Gertlier and why is he so controversial? Gertlier hails from a successful diamond trading family in Tel Aviv. You can probably just play it.
Yeah.
His grandfather co-founded Israel's Diamond Exchange in 1947. Gertlier arrived in Congo in 1997 as a 23-year-old diamond dealer seeking rough diamonds. He quickly struck a chord with former Congo President Joseph Kabila and is accused of leveraging his friendship with him. It is alleged that Gertlier made a fortune by becoming an unofficial gatekeeper for mining deals across the country. In 2000, during the civil war in Congo, Gertlier offered $20 million to the Kalabas for weapons to bolster their efforts to remain in power, in exchange for a monopoly on Congo's diamond market. In February 2017, Gertlier made an estimated $400 million after he sold his stake to two mines in Congo to commodities giant Glencore for $960 million. The deal cost the African Republic hundreds of millions of dollars. In December 2017, the U.S. Department imposed sanctions on Gertlier for all of his alleged corrupt business deals. But Gertlier hired Trump's lawyer, Alan Dershowitz. See, all these, like...
Yep.
To get the sanctions lifted during the last days of the Trump administration, Gertlier was granted a sanctions waiver, which gave him access to his frozen funds and financial institutions. But in March 2021, the Biden administration reimposed sanctions on Gertlier.
Okay.
So you get the gist. And given that Dershowitz is involved, there's some shit. Right? Yeah. So
yes,
now, so basically, Trump released the sanctions on Gertlier. Biden reimposed them 3 years ago. And now, 3 years later, seeking access to Congo's metals, White House aims to ease sanctions.
Of course they do.
A deal to allow the Israeli billionaire Dan Gertler to cash out. You can zoom out. His mining positions in the Congo has enraged human rights activists and some government officials. So this is from the New York Times, and it's written by Eric Lipton. So he reports.
Yeah, keep that with a grain of salt as we're reading.
Right.
It's the New York Times. But
it's the New York Times. However,
where will the propaganda show up? That's what I'm wondering. You know?
Well, let's look for it. A deal to allow the Israeli billionaire Dan Gertler to cash out his mining positions in the Democratic Republic of Congo has enraged human rights activists and some government officials. A cobalt mine. No, that's from the picture, so I need to read that. 3 years after the Biden administration officials tightened sanctions on a billionaire Israeli mining executive for corrupt business practices in the Congo, they have reversed themselves and are offering the executive a deal they hope will bolster the supply of a metal vital to electric vehicles.
Pause.
The plan would allow...
Me and Indy just covered a story on Gaza's future plans, the plans that Israel has for the Strip, right? It included large electric vehicle manufacturing. Right? So, I mean, this was literally akin to Hitler's Germany plan model or whatever.
Right.
Right? This was literally, they had pictures and everything to go with it. So, yeah, look out for that from How Did We Miss That?
Right. So basically, they're just using this blueprint for Africa as well, it sounds like.
Well, this is not just that it will be, they will need the resources of the Global South for this. So, yeah. As always.
But anyway, the plan would allow the executive Dan Gertler to sell off his remaining stakes in 3 giant copper and cobalt mining operations in Congo. Once Mr. Gertler sells his positions, the Biden administration hopes Western-leaning companies will be more willing to invest in Congo, perhaps delivering a greater supply of cobalt to the United States as automakers race to increase domestic production of batteries. But certain state and Treasury Department officials strongly oppose the effort, saying that Mr. Gertler should not be allowed to profit from his deal-making, which the Biden administration earlier argued had cheated the citizens of Congo out of more than $1 billion in mining revenues. The son of one of Israel's biggest diamond dealers, Mr. Gertler started to invest in Congo nearly 3 decades ago. He eventually became one of the biggest holders of mining rights in the Central African nation and the target of accusations that he had enriched himself at the expense of a population that is among the world's poorest. Mr. Gertler did not respond to a request for comment through his lawyer. Of course he did. However, Mr. Gertler has long disputed corruption allegations, arguing that his Congo investments were above board, providing the country billions in taxes and creating thousands of jobs, of which they are underpaid and overworked, but I'm sure that's nothing to him anyway. Those in the Biden administration pushing for the settlement deal see it as a solution to a competitive disadvantage for the United States, one that could only grow as automotive manufacturers continue to expand their production of electric vehicles. And it is in keeping with the administration's policy positions that embrace alternative energy solutions to fossil fuels. But it also illustrates the compromises that world leaders often acquiesce to when efforts to hold individuals accountable for their actions collide with the political and economic interests of their countries. As it now stands, Chinese-based mining companies own or have a major stake in most cobalt production sites in Congo, which produced 78% of the world's supply of the metal last year. The last large America-owned mining company was pulled out of Congo in 2020, just as the electric vehicle revolution was taking off. 2 senior Biden administration officials who were not authorized to speak on the record said they believed that the Western firms would continue to avoid investing in the Congo mining sector as long as Mr. Gertler remained involved, given the continuing concerns about corruption in the industry there. The proposed deal, they said, will give a clean slate to Congo and help the nation fight corruption more broadly. But human rights activists are openly challenging the plan. To ease sanctions now seems ludicrous, giving Gertler a free pass to profit from ill-gotten gains, said Aniek van Woltenberg, the executive director of RAID, a nonprofit that monitors mining transactions in Congo and other countries. The deal leaves Gertler enriched, unscathed, and unaccountable, with little regard for those who matter most, the people of the Congo. The proposed deal comes as the Biden administration is planning tariffs on an array of Chinese imports, including electric vehicles and advanced batteries, part of a recent wave of protectionist positioning by both Republicans and Democrats. The State Department did not respond to a request for comment, but officials involved in the negotiations and on Capitol Hill confirmed to the New York Times that objections have been raised from inside the department. For now, according to senior Biden administration officials, a framework has been presented to Mr. Gertler's lawyers in the past week that would allow him to cash out his stakes at Kamoto Copper Company and Mutanga Mining, both primarily owned by Switzerland-based Glencore, and Metalco RTR, which is owned in part by the government of Kazakhstan.
Very nice.
Mr. Gertler no longer has a formal ownership in the Glencore mines. The company bought him out in 2017, but he still paid royalties on copper and cobalt production at these facilities. Cumulatively, Mr. Gertler's business entitled entities now earn about $100 million a year in royalty payments from Congo, by administration officials estimated, even though he is under U.S. sanctions that prevents global banks from doing business with him and limit his ability to buy or sell business ventures. Oh, poor you. These free mining operations alone produce nearly 30% of the world's supply of cobalt, which is important in longer-range electric vehicles because it helps give the batteries the ability to hold more of a charge. There are also major global sources of copper, a metal increasingly in demand as a revolution in artificial intelligence is prompting the construction of new data centers filled with copper wiring. As a condition to allow the asset sales, Mr. Gertler would be required to release a detailed statement of any remaining holdings in Congo, which would then be examined by an independent auditor. While this review is underway, half of the proceeds of the asset sale would be held in escrow. Any remaining assets Mr. Gertler tries to hide could be seized by the government there. Mr. Gertler will also have to withdraw lawsuits against human rights leaders in Congo who have been critical of his role in the mining industry there, such as Jean-Claude Imputu, a spokesman for Congo is not for sale, which opposes the deal. Eventually, under the plan, Mr. Gertler could get a general license from the United States that will broadly reopen international financial markets to him worldwide. If he was accused of corruption violations again, full sanctions could be reimposed, the officials said. The Biden officials acknowledged that the deal was motivated by a desire to find ways to strengthen economic ties with Congo, as well as aid the country, which has been plagued by a history of corrupt mine deals and child labor abuses at makeshift mines. The Biden administration has already committed to help finance the expansion of a rail network that will link Congo and neighboring Zambia to Angola on the South Atlantic Ocean. The link would allow the massive mines in Congo and Zambia to more direct supply battery manufacturing plants in the United States or allied countries. So notice, even here, this rail link has nothing to do with the Congolese, nothing to do for the people there. Kind of similar to this, what are they building in Israel? This port?
Yes.
In the guise of humanitarian aid. Same shit here. But so far, no major mining company has publicly disclosed a plan to reinvest in Congo.
Right.
And why would they?
Yeah.
The deal with Mr. Gertler has been pushed most aggressively by Amos Hochstein, an advisor to President Biden on energy security issues. Mr. Hochstein has also been working closely with other nations to expand access by Western-leaning players to cobalt and copper mines in Africa. When we said we'll go to the moon, nobody knew how do we get there, Mr. Hochstein said in January while in Saudi Arabia at a mining industry event that included discussions with mining industry representatives from Congo. We just said we would, and we made it happen. So that is how we have to approach this energy transition. 2 U.S. government officials involved in the negotiations objected to the role that Mr. Hochstein has played, suggesting that he has tried to force others in the foreign policy and human rights divisions of the government to bend to his will. But senior Biden administration officials noted that the White House always played a coordinating role in major sanctions cases. Question has also come from Capitol Hill. The Biden administration has refused to be transparent about any framework for a deal on this issue or about who is guiding the policy. Senator Jim Risch, Republican of Idaho, said in a statement to the Times. The critical question is, what prevents Gertler indefinitely from just returning to Congo even now or in the future administration? Mr. Gertler's dealings with Congo have been a source of tension with Washington for decades, after he built close ties with a previous president, Laurent Kabila, and his son, Joseph Kabila, who became president after his father was killed. Mr. Gertler was targeted with sanctions in December 2017 during the first year of the Trump administration, as the Treasury Department claimed Congo had been cheated as a result of opaque and corrupt mining and oil deals involving the billionaire, which he secured at discount prices because of his ties with the Kabila family. Mr. Gertler almost immediately began to fight back. He hired a legal and lobbying team that at one point included both Alan Dershowitz, the former Harvard law professor, and Louis J. Frisch, the former IBF director, with appeals reaching directly to Treasurer Secretary Stephen T. Mnuchin, among others in the Trump administration. Shortly before Mr. Trump left office, the Treasury Department moved to ease the sanctions with no public notice, after Mr. Gertler, through his lawyers and associates in Israel, argued to American officials that there was some kind of national security interest served by allowing him to do global deals again. By March 2021, the Biden administration reimposed the full sanctions, asserting that granting Mr. Gertler relief was inconsistent with America's strong foreign policy interests in combating corruption around the world. Mr. Gertler kept battling. This time, he enlisted Felix Tshisekedi, sorry for the pronunciation, Congo's president, who wrote a letter to Mr. Biden in 2022 urging the United States to revoke the sanctions. If sanctions are perceived by foreign investors as a dead end to the liquidation of their entitles and the cessation of their activities, this anxiety would surely lead to the disappearance of foreign direct investment in Congo, Mr. Tshisekedi wrote. Last year, Mr. Gertler wrote a series of letters to human rights leaders in Congo, Europe, and the United States, telling them that the sanctions had been crippling and that he was ready to sell his remaining Congo assets to get the punishment lifted. The essence of the sanctions is not merely to punish, he wrote in one letter. It is equally envisaged that for the sanctions regime to work, they should promote positive change. The human rights groups say they do not object to allowing Mr. Gertler to dispose of his remaining financial stakes in mines and other holdings in Congo, but they said he should be forced to simply forfeit them. There is extensive documentary evidence of Mr. Gertler's corrupt activities in the Congo, said a statement issued by Congo is not for sale, which was provided to the Biden administration to object to the proposed deal. The group demanded that Mr. Gertler receive no further financial gains for illicitly acquired assets.
Yeah.
But the Biden administration officials said this exception was unrealistic.
Of course
Mr.
they
Gertler
did.
is already... What?
Of course they did. Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Gertler is already earning royalty payments and would not be willing to simply walk away from his investment. Oh. So, I mean, I know you probably have thoughts, but
I do. I wrote them down. I wrote them down on this plate because I didn't have any paper, so it was on the plate. It mentioned AI, which we've covered. Israel specific stuff with AI.
Yes,
and just in general.
Lavender for one.
Yeah, and the one that's super long that you got bored of, as well, right? That this is partially the new world order, right?
A new world order awaits.
New world order stuff, WEF stuff of transhumanism and all that stuff. Shout out to Whitney Webb and crew. But to do that, they need electrical components, right? Which this country isn't the only one, right? We covered way back in the day with Jay Buffont, I think, that Zimbabwe banned lithium exports, right?
Yes.
Burkina Faso, I think, followed suit with a lot of their stuff and uranium, right? For the French.
Yes.
Right? So that's power for that same system, right? So you're seeing a lot of these African countries pull back a lot of the resources here. And what's been happening, Collin? In Burkina Faso, in the Congo,
they're rising up.
Well, and also there's a lot of coups and possible assassination attempts with people with CIA badges left on their body. So you're seeing helicopters with Iranian leaders fall out the sky. You're seeing, plenty of people in South America couped and whatever. And we're kind of the only country known to do that kind of stuff. I don't know if you remember, but so I think that goes hand in hand with these resource grabs, right? And you will see us in any way possible try to grab these resources. And you've brought on what is her name? She is a doctor. I want to say Malawi or she's one of the African ladies you bring on frequently. Doctor somebody. You'll remember it in a second. That talked about, keeping African resources in Africa. So
Dr. Africana? Is that
that's
what you're
it.
talking about?
I think so.
Okay.
But yeah, I just see America willing to do anything and everything to seize these resources. So and definitely, and like we talked about it with the EV production in the Gaza Strip that Israel wants. This kind of stuff is going to go hand in hand with that. Why do you think Elon Musk fights so hard for government contracts? Keep Tesla in business a little bit. He might have to play ball sometimes. But anyway, but you have a little bit more of this, I think, right?
I have a little bit more. So this was a tweet that I found from Slav Free Spirit at Slav's Free Spirit. So they write, American-Israeli mercenary Benjamin Rubin was captured by a failed coup in the Congo.
Like I was
Rubin
saying,
is a paid mercenary of the former head of the Israeli spy agent Mossad and the Jewish billionaire, our boy Dan.
Yeah.
This is the second failed coup by Yoshi Cohen, who has been banned from Congo. So this might be a little hard to read, but I want to read some of it. Dan Gertler, an Israeli who looks the Congo at the heart of genocide. Can you zoom in a bit, please?
Yeah, here, let me try that.
Okay. I have to spend that. That's all right. One of the deadliest conflicts in history is currently taking place in the Congo. A genocide motivated mainly of a bloody conflict opposing several armed factions. An Israeli man, Dan Gertler, is at the heart of this genocide. He has illegally seized several mining resources, copper, gold, diamonds, and oil, in Congo in recent decades. According to calculations by the Congo is Not for Sale coalition between 2003 and 2021, Dan Gertler accumulated $1.95 billion in royalties to the detriment of the Congolese people. He currently earns no less than $254,000 per day. For this, he did not hesitate to sow chaos in the region. From the 2000s, he moved closer to the regime of Laurent Desire Kabila then empowering Congo, and acquired mining licenses at ridiculous prices. Some mining contracts included the delivery of weapons from which are currently flooding the country and fueling conflict and massacre. He is also accused by local associations of supplying weapons to armed factions favorable to him. Dan Gertler resides currently in Israel, where he is one of the biggest fortunes and owns nearly 12% of the global cobalt market. So, very rich and very much corrupt as hell. So, I want to play this to kind of end the segment. Going to listen to a little bit of Malcolm X. Happy birthday, Brother Malcolm. This is from @Joe_Basley, who he writes, the situation of the Congo where genocide is currently ongoing is older than what most think of us think it is. Even during the time of Malcolm X, he emphasized that the killing in the Congo is as a result of instigation by European powers, and Israel is a proxy of that, who are fighting each other over the mineral wealth of the Congo. Even until date in 2024, the Congo genocide continues, and the main reason is due to Congo's mineral resources and establishment of puppet government in Congo by European neocolonialists. So let's see what. So let's play Malcolm and see what he has to say regarding the Congo.
That the white people should be ashamed of the deplorable situation that has been existing in the Congo, which is not the fault of the Congolese, but which is the result of instigation by European powers who are fighting each other over the mineral wealth of the Congo. Now, to make it appear that the Congolese themselves are criminals or brutes because they're reacting to these injustices that they've been victimized by is again ducking the question.
Shambi is the murderer of Lumumba, who was the rightful prime minister of the Congo. Shambi is the man whose forces fought against the United Nations forces and against the United States. And despite this criminal past of Shambi, now the United States is backing Shambi, who has hired South African mercenaries, who are hired killers to disrupt the peaceful efforts of the freedom fighters from Stanleyville to make the type of country there that they want. And it is this American support of Shambi, actually, that's at the root of the whole problem.
I mean, what'd they do to him? What happened to Malcolm? Just saying.
So,
also Haiti recently, right? They pulled similar stuff there too. So you know.
So
it
tale
sucks
all
for
this
us
time.
with good memories, don't it? We just remember too much.
I think that.
So, yep. Anyway,
I think that
sorry, Malcolm.
That's why we've talked. So we talked not a lot, but I mean we've talked a little bit more about Congo. So, but yeah, just to kind of give you guys an idea, ultimately all this money is, and that's the kind of thing in this article that's wild. It's not even the idea of like, how about paying people who are working at these mines a living wage? No, it's to kind of get off this guy just so that they're able to exploit these people even more for for electric vehicles in the West.
Yeah.
So, so the fact that Biden and again, given this is the New York Times, so obviously we're gonna take what they're saying with a grain of salt. But even with the article, I can't see the lie necessarily, given what we know, kind of what you shared regarding Gaza. This is kind of going in line with, what we've kind of reported on over the last few months. And the fact that, of course, the Biden administration is being very quiet about this. Like, this should be major news. And the fact that it's not, now granted, it's not going to be, because given what's happening, not getting much play at all, even in independent media, and we definitely should change that. But even just with what you mentioned to me, because I didn't watch How Do We Miss That episode like this past week, just making those connections that no, what's happening in Gaza is very much related, if not similar, to what's happening in Congo. And to all those people who are saying, like, oh, why are we so concerned about Gaza? Like, we should be focusing on the Congo, bitches. Like, this is why you should care about both.
Everything's
Because
connected.
everything
Like,
is connected.
Yep.
So what's affecting the Palestinians is also affecting Africans too.
Yep.
So,
well, as you know, Collin, just talking about these things is why we're demonetized. You can go to kodashv.com/Indie News Network, get around that system a little bit, hook us up, you know. You scan that QR code on your screen as well, or put !donate in the chat. Leave us a little super chat if you want to do that way. You know, also, if you can't do that, like and subscribe. Very easy. Hit the share button. We're trying to get to 2K. We're 50 people away. 50 people got to hit that subscribe button. Hopefully it's lighting up while I say subscribe. Subscribe. Do it again. Subscribe. Do it.
I think one person subbed while we were live.
Nice. Look at you doing it.
I think.
Leave a comment too. Let us know what you think. All right. While we're at it, before we get to that story, I'm going to go check Rockfin and Rumble, which, if you don't like the way YouTube senses us, you can follow us on there by following the description in the, what do they call that now? Is in the description? The link in the description? That's what it is.
Yeah.
So, Anna Mayers, over on the Ruckfin, guess NAFTA was a terrible idea. That's one of the reasons. Yep. So, so apparently no T in Gertler.
Gertler, yeah.
Why they be weird with the English? Stop putting the T in there if you don't want us to say it. You know? Like, ugh. That's like trying to call orange jello orangelo. Clearly it is orange jello, sir. Clearly. Shout out Orangelo. Anyway, let's get to our last story this evening. We're going to talk about the Assange appeal that happened recently. Collin, did you follow it? Were you there? It happened at 5 in the morning over in the UK time, so people probably missed it. But Joe Loria over at Consortium News, one of those Indie Media Award honorees, as well. But he writes, Assange wins right to appeal on First Amendment issue. The High Court in London ruled Monday that Julian Assange can appeal his extradition to the U.S. on the grounds that he's being denied his First Amendment rights. Right? Remember we talked about this? So, the High Court in London on Monday granted Assange the right to appeal the order, right? On the grounds that the U.S. did not satisfy the court that it would allow Assange a First Amendment defense. That's that whole citizenry stuff, right? On the basis of where he's from. So, Loria spent a long time listening to the United States putting lipstick on a pig, but the judges didn't buy it. Stella Assange told reporters outside the court building, as a family, we are relieved, but how long can this go on? The United States should read the situation and drop the case. Assange has been imprisoned in London's notorious Belmarsh prison for more than 5 years on a remand pending the outcome of his extradition. He must now spend an untold number of more months in the maximum security prison awaiting the start of the appeal. He was locked in the Ecuadorian embassy for 9 years before that. In that sense, it was a bitter victory for Assange. He gets to stay in prison another year or more. Joe Biden doesn't have to worry about a journalist showing up in chains in Alexandria, Virginia during a presidential campaign. And of course, Assange could lose his appeal and arrive in the U.S. at a more opportune time for Biden. In another sense, it was a victory for the supremacy of European law when it comes to free speech. So,
well, so basically, this is a victory for Biden that he doesn't have to worry about it.
Yes.
Assuming that he will not be president come this time next year.
Maritzi, Stefania, of course, we should be happy the High Court has not ruled Julian Assange to be extradited, and there will be a new appeal. Sure, an appeal. Then another appeal. Then another appeal. This is the 14th year of her professional life that she flies to London for an appeal on Julian Assange, and he's still not free. So, Stefania telling it like she sees it. Misty replies, agreed, be happy, this is the best of truly awful outcomes, but don't lose sight of the fact that every second this continues is a tragedy, and they're just going to keep dragging it out until enough people put enough pressure on them, yet to make it politically untenable for them to continue. We need your help, all of you. Right? So, Assange was once again too ill to attend court. We haven't seen him publicly since the photo was leaked from the day he had a mini stroke in October of 2021. Demand to see and hear from Assange. Let him speak. That's my big thing. I would like to hear him speaking. You know, so I don't know why that is not allowed. But anyway, here is Stella outside this court proceeding, so we're going to let her have the floor.
Judges reached the right decision. We spent a long time hearing the United
Also, sorry for the quality, is the best I could find. I think there were some internet issues, so keep that in mind.
States putting lipstick on a pig, but the judges did not buy it. As a family, we're relieved. As a family, we're relieved.
I don't know who that was that said, get the fuck off me. I don't know where that's in there. Someone was very upset. So.
But how long can this go on? The United States should read the situation and drop this case now. Now is the moment to do it. Just abandon this shameful attack on journalists, on the press, and the public that has been going on for 14 years. This case is shameful, and it is taking an enormous toll on Julian. He is under enormous pressure. He has been in Belmarsh prison for over 5 years. It's been 2 years since the order was issued. This case should just be abandoned. The Biden administration should have dropped it from day one. But now is a right moment for the Biden administration to drop it. So please, those in the United States who are in a power to make a decision, please just drop this case now. Don't let this go on any longer. Thank you.
Any questions?
No.
Yep. Did want to shout out some of these people. So there's O'Brien. I think that's it. You know, they did some hockeying outside. Is that the word? Hockeying? To do a haka.
Yes. Yes.
But here, I'll let them do their haka.
Raising your fucking ass! Why Takahiti? Gamate, go! Gamate, go! Tenete, Sana, Ititi, Ititera, Akupare, Ititera,
But definitely want to showcase them out there doing that. You know, shout out to the Kiwis out there. But Joe Lauria continues. The High Court in London on March 26 has ruled that Assange had 3 grounds to appeal because 1, extradition was incompatible with his free speech rights enshrined in the European Convention on Human Rights. 2, that he might be prejudiced because of his nationality, not be given the First Amendment protections as a non-American. And 3, because he's inadequate protection against the death penalty, right? I've not seen a lot of talks about this again, right? So now, when we covered the last assurances, Collin, what was the big deal about the White House assurances and how they mean nothing? Because the judiciary can do what it wants without the executive branch interfering. So that's kind of weird that they keep asking for these assurances, in my opinion. So rather than proceed with the appeal on those 3 grounds, the High Court gave the U.S. the chance, 4 years after the extradition process began, to promise it would not use the death penalty, which they've already said that's still a possibility. Their lawyers have said that. So, and to guarantee his free speech rights. Because it is an executive branch decision, the U.S. was able to assure the British government that it would not seek the death penalty, and Assange's lawyers on Monday said they did not consent. That, left unexplained, however, was why the British Home Office waited 4 years to seek what is normally a routine assurance in an extradition case. The free speech issue was more complicated because the decision about Assange asserting a First Amendment defense at trial will be up to a U.S. federal court and not the Department of Justice. Therefore, the DOJ could not issue such an assurance on a free speech issue. That ultimately led the 2 judges, Justice Jeremy Johnson and Victoria Sharp, to allow Assange to launch a formal appeal of his extradition because of an apparent violation of British extradition law based on the European Convention on Human Rights that requires the receiving country to allow an extradited person the right to free speech. Johnson and Sharp did not buy the convoluted argument of James Lewis KC for the United States on why the U.S. should get their hands on Assange despite being unable to guarantee his freedom of expression. Edward Fitzgerald KC and Mark Summers KC, barristers for Assange, easily picked apart 3 pieces of Lewis's somewhat desperate presentation. Pointed out how Lewis has misled the court by saying the U.S. assurance would allow Assange to rely on the First Amendment, when in fact it says he can seek to rely on it. How none of the slew of case law Lewis cited to supposedly bolster his argument actually dealt with a trial, which of course Assange will if he goes to the U.S., that saying Chelsea Manning was not able to invoke First Amendment rights in defense of leaking classified defense information meant Assange shouldn't either was nonsense because Manning was a government whistleblower who had signed non-disclosure agreements. Assange is a publisher. The judges apparently also rejected a drawn-out, arcane, and overly lawyered argument from Lewis about the difference between citizenship and nationality that to post-layman was nearly incomprehensible. That was a watershed moment in this very long battle, said WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Kristonen, at an event following the hearing. Today marked the beginning of the end of the persecution. The signaling from the courts here in London was clear to the U.S. government. We don't believe your guarantees. We don't believe in your assurances. So, the First Amendment is at the core of unconstitutionality of the Espionage Act, which makes no exception for a journalist to possess and disseminate defense information. The Assange case could lead to a constitutional challenge of it, said Marjorie Cohn, former president of the National Lawyers Guild. That may be one reason the DOJ does not want Assange to invoke the First Amendment in court. The U.S.-UK Extradition Act bars extradition if an individual might be prejudiced to his nationality and due to the centrality of the First Amendment to his defense. Cohn told Consortium last month, if he's not permitted to rely on the First Amendment because of his status as a foreign national, he'll thereby be prejudiced, potentially very greatly prejudiced by reason of his nationality. Assange contends that he is given First Amendment rights, the prosecution will be stopped. Cohn said the First Amendment is therefore of central importance to his defense. Cohn added if he has the right to free expression and freedom of speech, then what he's accused of doing, would not violate the law, though allowing First Amendment rights at trial would be ultimately a judge's decision and not the executive branch's. Assistant U.S. Attorney Gordon Kromberg, who is prosecuting Assange, has not only indicated that he would file a motion against it in court, but has said explicitly that non-U.S. citizens do not have First Amendment rights in the U.S. for acts committed abroad. A date has not yet been set for Assange's appeal to begin. So, any questions before I close this out?
I mean, as you said, this is just more of a kicking up the can. Like, literally to assuming that Trump is going to be president to him.
Yeah.
So this just kind of lets Biden off the hook, that no one has to make any noise about this at all. And
now it can be used as a bargaining chip for this election as well, right?
True.
You know, depending on how either of them might play that. You know, it could be used as political pawn. But, yeah, I mean, it just seems like what we predicted was that this is going to get drawn out further, you know. So, I mean, drop the case. That's what needs to happen. The DOJ needs to just drop this case. So,
right.
But, Matt Kennard, says, I was in court today. Be in no doubt it was a huge victory for Julian. In just over an hour, the U.S. case was completely shredded. The CIA's lawyers were all over the place. But I wanted to bring this because Matt Kennard shouts out the activists who do the work on this day in, day out. You can see this is from Paula Isaiah, who friend of the show.
I'll finish with this. It's not just the justice system that he's exposed with this case. It's also the media. Because where the hell are the media? There's all these irregularities, all these conflicts of interest, that if they were in the mainstream media, even one story we've done had appeared in maybe The Guardian or The Times, it would have changed the case because they'd have had to answer to it. Right? They would have been made accountable. And he's exposed the fact that the media operates largely as an arm of the state, which is why he's in Belmarsh prison, because he took journalism too seriously. And he was a threat to power, which is what he meant to be as a journalist, and so they put him in prison. And all the rest of the journalists that basically don't show any solidarity with him in this country and don't cover his legal case, he embarrassed them. Because he showed them up as arms of the state, largely. They do some good stories, but largely arms of the state, and they don't like being exposed, so they become willing executioners alongside the justice system. But I have hope. I'm more hopeful today than I've been in the whole case. And I also think it's a testament to the activists who have been on this case for years and years. And they're often people that get no recognition and no one knows their names, but they're out, especially this case particularly, there's Assange activists that are super, super dedicated, out in the rain, shine, outside Belmarsh, outside the courtroom. And I think they've had an impact. Activism has had an impact. So testament to them, and we've got to keep going, and we've got to keep raising the issue and get it as mainstream as possible, and we can win.
Absolutely. Matt Kennard, Declassified UK, your work is fantastic.
Thank you.
I utilize it. I encourage people to not live. If folks here are not following Declassified UK.
So, yeah, shout out to the activists. You know, Paula Isaiah, testament to activists, often people that get no recognition. No one knows their names. Assange activists are super, super dedicated, out in the rain, shine, outside Belmarsh, outside the courtroom, and I think they've had an impact. Right? So, good stuff there. But yeah, pretty much my verdict is this. This is my verdict. So, Biden kicking that can down the road, as he tends to do. But yeah, we'll see. I will try to be optimistic. But you know, clearly the process is the punishment. So yeah, talking about these things is why we're demonetized. So Go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. Get around that system. Scan that QR code. Send us a few dollary dues. And if you can't do that, we appreciate you just liking and subbing, sharing, commenting, doing all that good stuff, hitting that subscribe button, hitting the bell even. It supposedly does something, lets you not miss us. But, yep. Anything else, Collin? I think that's it.
No, I think that's it. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good to me. You can always go to our shop, get some merch. Use code Jesse to get 20% off. Look at you. Get you that watermelon hoodie. Why not? Why not get that? Isn't it nice? It looks good. What's coming up this week, Collin? Does Indy know? Is Indy here to tell us?
No, but I could probably figure it out. Let me pull up.
I know Tara's got something lined up for Friday. Supposedly talking to Moppin about the Iranian guy. So that'll be interesting. Anything else?
Hold on, let me.
What happens on Thursdays?
Politically homeless, allegedly.
Okay.
That would be. So, politically homeless, if they do go on, would be at 9.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're gonna go live tomorrow. Tara on Friday.
Okay.
Yes. Do you have
Moppin.
Tara on Friday?
Yeah, I just
Okay.
talked about that.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
Yeah. Tara on Friday, Angel on Friday. Angel in the afternoon would be doing stuff then too.
Yeah, Angel on Friday at 7. American Tradition Clip Show 10:30
Friday as well.
on Friday.
Yeah.
Saturday at 8, Pro Wrestling Talk with Angel. Saturday night at 11, Snow Hero Gaming.
Yeah.
Sunday,
Also go check out Beauty and the Boomer over there on Saturdays. How do we miss that Sunday?
At 10.
Not sure what we're doing Memorial Day for that. We'll see. You might decide family time.
Oh, yeah.
But otherwise.
So, TBD, I guess.
Yeah.
So, Monday is Nobody. Tuesday, Fairly Certain American Tradition.
Yeah.
And we'll be back here next week.
Yep. Same bad time, same bad channel.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anything else? I think that's it.
I think that is all for tonight.
Cool. Well, remember, kids, as always, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.
Thank you.